I still remember the way the room smelled that morning. Coffee, leather, expensive cologne. The kind of cologne that says, "I've never been told no." The kind of boardroom that says, "Only people who talk fast belong here." I had spent 6 weeks preparing for this moment. The pitch deck was flawless. The numbers were airtight. Every single slide had been rehearsed in my bedroom, in front of my cracked bathroom mirror, again and again. But the one thing I couldn't rehearse was how to speak without stuttering. Because no matter how many times I practiced, some syllables just refused to leave my throat. Dean, my boss, strutted in late. Course. A slick gray suit. Cufflinks that probably cost more than my entire rent. And that smug half-smile he wore like a signature. "All right, people," he clapped. Loud. "Let's make some magic. Eli's got the show today. Let's hope he doesn't take all day to say it." The room chuckled. It was a joke. A harmless one, they told themselves. But my ears burned like he'd slapped me. He was mocking my stutter. Openly. In front of clients. The worst part. No one said a thing. I stood up, my laptop already connected to the projector. The first slide appeared behind me. Cloud-based solutions for retail integration. My fingers trembled slightly as I clicked to the next one. Good morning everyone, I began. And that's when it happened. Dean coughed loudly. "Sisikachi," he said under his breath. Loud enough for the table to hear. Loud enough to set off a ripple of laughter down the side of the table. I stopped speaking. Not because I forgot what to say. But because I knew if I opened my mouth again I might choke. Or worse, cry. I scanned the table. 12 people. Executives from future core capital. Big money. Big deal. None of them made eye contact. Except one, Jessica, the intern sitting near the back. She looked uncomfortable. Like she wanted to disappear. Same here. But I didn't leave. Clicked again. Let the slides run silently behind me. And I finished the entire pitch. In silence. Bullet points, animations, ROI stats. Flicking through them like a slideshow nobody cared about anymore. When I sat down, Dean leaned in close and whispered, "Don't worry, kid. Maybe next time just email it." The client smiled awkwardly, shook our hands and walked out. Dean did his usual follow-up. Charming, laughing, winning them over in the hallway. When the room emptied, I sat in my chair, staring at the dark screen. Alone. For a few seconds. Then Jessica returned quietly, placed a small coffee in front of me and said, "I thought you were brave. Don't let him take that from you." She walked away. And my throat closed up again. But this time not from fear. From the tears I refused to let fall. I pulled out my phone from my pocket. And tapped the voice memos app. The red dot was still glowing. The recording still running. It had captured everything. Dean's snide remark. Laughter. My humiliation. I hadn't meant to record it. I had only turned it on to rehearse my pacing, to listen back later and improve. But now it was something else. Evidence. Proof. Spark. I went home early that day. Said I had a migraine. Dean didn't argue. Why would he? To him I was a forgettable employee. The stuttering analyst with a reliable work ethic and zero presence. I was safe to mock. Punching bag no one defended. That night I listened to the recording. Over and over. Not because I enjoyed hearing it. It actually hurt more each time. But because pain has a way of sharpening the truth. And I needed that. I needed to feel how deep the cut had gone, so I'd never let it happen again. I stared at my bedroom ceiling, earbuds still in. The room dark, quiet. And for the first time in my life I thought, what if this isn't just about me? What if this recording could be more than just proof? What if this was the beginning of something bigger? I didn't know it yet, but that one file, saved to my cloud drive, would become the first domino. The first strike. Because Dean Harrington had no idea who I really was. No idea what I was capable of when I stopped staying silent. No idea what a quiet man can do when he finally chooses to speak. People think silence is weakness. They think if you don't speak much, You must not have much to say. But silence is rarely empty. My silence was loud. It screamed every time I wanted to say something but couldn't. Every time a word got stuck like gravel behind my tongue. Every time a teacher's eyes filled with pity instead of patience. You see, I wasn't born with a stutter. Found me. I was 7 the first time it showed up. 3rd grade. Rainy morning. Spelling bee. The word was accidental. I knew how to spell it. I had practiced all night with my mom. She made flashcards and everything. Said I was the smartest kid in class. But when I stood up and said, "Ay," the classroom filled with giggles. I looked at Mrs. Carroll. She mouthed the word slowly. But my mouth wouldn't move. Something broke inside me. I didn't know how to fix it. Kids don't understand what kindness is. They just want to laugh. And I was the punchline. They called me Echo. Broken cassette. Stutter step. I tried to laugh along. But inside I started disappearing. Piece by piece. By the time I turned 12, I stopped raising my hand in class. By 15, I had trained myself to substitute difficult words with easier ones. I'd change entire sentences in real time just to avoid triggering it. People called me quiet. They thought I was shy. I wasn't. I was exhausted. My dad didn't help. He thought I just needed to talk slower. Said I was thinking too fast for my mouth. He loved me, but he didn't get it. Nobody really did. Except my mom. She never told me to just breathe. She just listened. And that helped more than any therapy ever could. When I got to college, things got better. And worse. Better because no one knew me. Worse because professors loved cold calling. The first time it happened in Intro to Economics, I froze mid-sentence. The guy sitting next to me muttered, "Is he okay?" The girl behind me snorted and whispered, "He's buffering." I didn't go back the next week. Instead, I emailed the professor. Explained everything. He didn't reply. But he did something better. Next class, he handed me a clicker and said, "You can contribute silently." For the rest of the semester, I used that clicker to answer every question. I finished top of the class. That one act of kindness taught me something. People don't need to fix you. They just need to stop expecting you to be someone you're not. That's when I discovered my strength. Data. Numbers. Systems. They didn't stutter. They didn't laugh or judge. They made sense. They obeyed rules. They spoke for me when I couldn't. By the time I graduated, I had 3 job offers. I chose the one where they said I could grow with the company. Where they promised they valued talent over flash. That company was Harrington and Blake. And my boss was Dean. First, he was charming. He said I was a machine. Said he liked that I got things done quietly. But the longer I stayed, the more I realized. He liked that I didn't challenge him. He liked that I stayed silent. The perfect subordinate. I got promoted twice in 3 years. But never once asked for a raise. Never pushed back in meetings. Never made noise. Until that presentation. Until Dean laughed. Until something inside me woke up. Because that wasn't the first time I had been laughed at. But it was the last time I'd allow it. That night, after listening to the recording for the 3rd time, I sat at my desk and opened a blank document. Not for a resignation letter. Not for an HR complaint. But for a plan. A long, slow, deliberate plan. The kind that required patience. Documentation. Discipline. The kind of plan someone quiet is perfect for. People say revenge is a dish best served cold. But they forget before you serve it you have to cook it. And I was just getting started. I didn't go back to the office the next day. I told them I was still recovering from the migraine. Dean didn't even reply. Just sent back a thumbs up emoji. It was better that way. Because that night, I sat at my desk and began cataloging every single thing I'd recorded. And I mean everything. I had 216 voice memos stored across 3 phones. Work calls, team meetings, random brainstorming sessions. I had recorded them all. Not for revenge. But because I stuttered. You see, people like me, we develop tools. We adapt in silence. I'd play recordings back to analyze my own speech, figure out what words triggered my blocks, which consonants caught in my throat. But what I hadn't realized was, these recordings weren't just about me. They were about them. Dean's voice was in dozens of them. At first, harmless, snarky, sarcastic, joking. But then I started noticing patterns. Whenever clients were present, he'd interrupt me, talk over me, even correct me when I was completely right. And when we were alone, his words got sharper. Try not to sound like Windows 95 booting up today. That stutter is costing me deals. You know you're lucky to even be in this room, right? Listened, documented, time-stamped everything. I created folders. General disrespect, client humiliation, potential harassment, HR violations, gaslighting, and undermining. By the time I finished, I had a digital arsenal. Not just of audio, but screenshots, emails, Slack messages, proof. Undeniable. But I didn't act. Not yet. Because I knew one misstep, and I'd be branded the problem. The bitter employee with a chip on his shoulder. The guy who couldn't take a joke. So I kept playing the part. Silent, efficient, invisible. The next week I returned to work. Dean greeted me with, "Good to have you back. The plants missed your dramatic pauses." Smiled, nodded, then walked to my desk, turned on the little lav mic I had hidden in my jacket pocket, and whispered, "Recording started. Day 1 of evidence extension." Every day after that I documented everything. If Dean handed me a task with a snide remark, I recorded it. If he joked about my voice in front of the team, I logged it. I even began collecting testimonies. Quietly, indirectly. Jessica, the intern, once whispered to me after a meeting, "You know he shouldn't be saying those things, right?" He nodded. "Do you ever record them?" she asked, almost like a joke. I looked her in the eyes and said, "Always." She blinked, then smiled. Something shifted. 2 days later, I received an anonymous email. Subject: "Thought you should have this." Attachment: .mp4 video file. Location: dinner with clients at the Windfall Lounge. Time: last Thursday. I opened the file. Dean, half drunk, laughing with 2 execs from Ridge and Malden. "I swear," he says on camera, "the guy takes 5 minutes to say hello. It's like watching a turtle give a TED Talk." The table erupts. Then one of the clients, blonde hair, expensive watch, leans in and says, "Then why keep him?" Dean grins. "He's useful. Quiet guys don't ask for promotions." I watched it twice. Then a third time. I didn't feel sad. Or angry. Felt calm. Cold. Focused. I saved the video in a new folder. Critical evidence. Public mockery. Then I opened a spreadsheet labeled Operation Quiet Storm. I listed everything I had. Audio, video, emails, witnesses. A detailed log of every incident, every snub, every cruel smirk caught in pixels. And beside each one I added a column. Impact level: low, medium, high. Use case: HR, legal, media, strategic presentation. I wasn't building a case anymore. I was building leverage. The next few weeks, I perfected my silence. I gave Dean no reason to be suspicious. I delivered reports on time. Took notes during meetings. Laughed when he made a joke, even when it was about me. All the while my recording devices ran like loyal spies. And then something unexpected happened. People started coming to me. Privately. Quietly. First Jessica. Then Aaron from finance. Then Kelly in admin. Each one had their own Dean horror story. Sexist comments. Racist jokes. Public humiliation. They didn't record him like I did. But they remembered. And they trusted me. Because I was no longer just that guy with the stutter. I was the guy who was listening. I compiled their stories. Redacted names. Filed them all under secondary testimonies. Pending confirmation, I began to see it all clearly. Dean's entire career was built on charisma and cruelty. He didn't lead, he controlled. He didn't coach, he mocked. And most of all, he depended on silence. Everyone's. But silence is funny. Can be deadly. Until it speaks. One day, in a private meeting with Dean, he said something I'll never forget. He leaned back, arms crossed, looking smug after dismissing one of my ideas. Eli, he said, some people were born to talk. Others were born to listen. Know your lane. Smiled, nodded, and thought, you're right, Dean. I was born to listen. But now I know exactly when to speak. Revenge is a slow burn. It's not about rage, or fire, or chaos. It's about pressure. Constant, controlled, quiet. And sometimes, you don't even have to strike. You just have to wait for your enemy to expose himself. Dean. He loved the spotlight, which made him reckless. The Windfall Lounge. Gold booths. Private rooms. Crystal glasses taller than most water bottles. This wasn't where you brought ideas. It was where you sealed deals. That Thursday, Dean had invited 3 executives from ArcNet Holdings. Big investors. He said he wanted me there to handle the boring numbers. I agreed. And then at the last second, I accidentally missed the dinner. Food poisoning, I texted. Hope I don't stutter throwing up, I added. He didn't reply. But he went anyway. That's where it started. The man who would become my unlikely ally was named Daniel Harlow. Mid-40s. Sharp dresser. One of ArcNet's senior advisors. The kind of guy who listened more than he spoke. I'd only met him twice in person. But he remembered me. More than that, he had noticed. Noticed how Dean cut me off. How he spoke for me. How he changed my numbers when presenting. Daniel had seen the cracks in Dean long before I did. And that night at Windfall Lounge, Dean gave him everything he needed. The video Daniel sent me arrived anonymously. No subject. Just a Dropbox link. Clicked it. There they were. Dean and the 2 other ArcNet execs. Sipping whiskey and laughing. Dean was on his 3rd drink. His voice. Louder than usual. His words. Floppier. Crueler. I swear that kid Eli is smart, but Jesus. Talking to him is like trying to download a file over dial-up. One exec chuckled. Dean kept going. Every meeting, I sit there praying he doesn't open his mouth. Makes me want to jab a fork in my ear. Like, say it already, man. So why keep him? Someone asked. Dean leaned forward. Because he works like a dog and never asks for a thing. Doesn't complain. Doesn't argue. Perfect employee. All bark, no bite. Scratch that. No bark at all. That's when Daniel's voice cut in. Doesn't it bother you, talking about someone like that? Dean shrugged. He doesn't even know. He's too slow to keep up. Daniel. You sure about that? Dean. Positive. He wouldn't even understand this conversation if he were here. When the video ended, I stared at my screen for a full 5 minutes. Not because I was hurt. That emotion was gone. I was past pain now. What I felt was confirmation. Everything I suspected. Everything I knew. Now recorded. By someone else. From the outside. With no skin in the game. It wasn't just my truth anymore. It was fact. I messaged the anonymous sender. Why send this to me? 10 minutes later I got a reply. Simple. Short. Powerful. You deserve to hear what he really thinks. You also deserve to be heard. Daniel didn't sign it. Didn't need to. Already knew. The next day at work, Dean was all smiles. Hope you're feeling better, he said, clapping my back in the hallway. You missed some juicy stories. Smiled back. Don't worry, I said. I caught up. He laughed. Oblivious. But something had shifted. I no longer felt like a chess piece. Felt like the player. After that, I refined the evidence map. Moved the ArcNet video to a folder labeled External Confirmation, Client Complicity. I sent a thank you email to Daniel, anonymously just in case. And then I started preparing phase 2. Because now I knew something powerful. Dean wasn't just a workplace bully. He was a liability. To the company. To investors. To anyone tied to his ego. All I had to do was shine a light on him. And he'd unravel himself. I didn't rush. Well, this was a symphony. And the conductor doesn't scream at the strings. He waits for the right moment to raise his hand. That moment was coming. But first I had to test the waters. The next week, I casually brought up the topic of employee feedback in our Monday meeting. Has the company ever considered anonymous pulse surveys? Yes. Dean rolled his eyes. Those are for soft companies. We don't need people crying about bad coffee or how someone forgot their birthday. Laughter around the table. But Jessica caught my eye. She didn't laugh. She nodded. I had allies now. And I had leverage. Not just data. Not just audio. But a network. People who had been quiet like me. People who had stories. One by one they were coming forward. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just like me, calculated. Precise. Quiet power rising. Dean couldn't see it yet. He still thought I was the same stuttering analyst with no backbone. The guy who choked on his own name in front of clients. But what he didn't know was that the quiet man he mocked had every word recorded, every insult documented, every mask crack preserved. Dean thought silence was weakness. He was about to learn it could be a weapon. Hope is dangerous, not because it makes you believe in things, but because it makes you expect fairness. And when fairness doesn't come, hope turns into something else, something sharper. It had been 3 weeks since I received the video from Daniel. 3 weeks of gathering, archiving, listening. 3 weeks of pretending to be the same quiet, agreeable Eli. And now, I was ready. Not for revenge. Not yet. I was still hoping, maybe, just maybe, Char would do the right thing. Her name was Marla Jennings, VP of People and Culture. Title that sounded warm and soft. But behind her oversized glasses and business casual sweaters was a heart made of policy manuals and NDAs. Had to try. I booked the meeting under a vague subject. Workplace climate concerns. She smiled when I walked in. Eli, come in. Close the door. You want coffee or water? I shook my head. Sit down. She opened her laptop. So, she said, how can I help? I took a deep breath. Press play on my phone. Dean's voice filled the room. Every meeting I sit there praying he doesn't open his mouth. He works like a dog and never asks for a thing. All bark, no bite. Scratch that, no bark at all. Marla listened in silence. Not a single blink. Not a flinch. When it ended, I added, I have more. 6 months worth. Audio. Screenshots. A video from a client. I didn't want to do this, but I need it to stop. She nodded slowly. Then spoke, her voice as calm as ever. Thank you for bringing this to us. Not me. Not I understand. Us. Sure, speak for. You're now a case file. I want to be clear, I said. I'm not trying to destroy anyone. But this is affecting my ability to do my job. It's humiliating. It's hostile. She tilted her head slightly, almost like a bird. We take concerns like this seriously. I'll review the files and bring it up with our legal department. Dean is a high performer. But that doesn't exempt him from accountability. Another pause. But we also need to be mindful of intent, tone, and cultural fit. Cultural fit. Did she just label verbal abuse as a fit issue? I looked at her. Really looked. And suddenly saw it. This wasn't shock. This wasn't concern. This was containment. I leaned forward. You do realize this could become a legal issue, right? She gave the smallest of smiles. Which is why I'd advise you not to share this outside the company. For your own protection. There it was. Not help. A warning. I left her office with a polite nod. A tight smile. And zero faith. HR wasn't there to protect employees. It was there to protect the company. And Dean. Dean was the company. Or at least the charming face of it. By the time I got back to my desk, there was already an email waiting. Subject. Follow up on our meeting. Thanks for coming in, Eli. I've escalated your concerns for internal review. We ask that you refrain from discussing this with others while we look into it. Your discretion is appreciated. Gag order. Wrapped in courtesy. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. Because in that moment, hope died. And in its place, clarity. I wasn't going to HR again. I wasn't going to beg someone to see what was already recorded in black and white. If the system protects the abuser, you don't work with the system. You outsmart it. That night I opened a new folder. Labeled it in all caps. External strategy. Phase 3 inside it, I created 4 subfolders. Legal exposure, investor risk, media package, drafts, exit plan, personal. I wasn't just collecting evidence now. I was building a release strategy. One that would end Dean's reign. With or without HR. Jessica messaged me the next morning. You okay? I replied with a single line. More than okay. I've stopped waiting for rescue. She heart reacted. And then sent a second message. Whatever you're planning. I want in. I had expected to fight alone. Turns out. Silence isn't always solitude. Sometimes it's just people waiting for someone else to speak first. And I was done being quiet. Dean came by my desk that afternoon. Smile. Same smug walk. You ever talk to HR? He asked. I looked up. I did. He raised an eyebrow. And they're looking into it. He laughed. Actually laughed. Right. Well, just remember, you're not the only one who can play with recordings. He said it as a threat. But what he didn't know was that he'd just given me a gift. Confirmation. I typed it immediately. Verbal threat, July 15th, 3:42 p.m. Witness. Jessica heard from 3 desks away, and I added it to the file. Because at this point, everything he said was just one more nail in his own coffin. Dean thought he had friends. He thought the system would protect him. He thought mocking someone like me was harmless. But I had a truth he couldn't bury. And I was about to bury him with it. Before the strategy. Before the recordings. Before the plan. There was a man who taught me something no boss, no HR manager, no client ever did. He taught me I didn't need to fix my voice to be heard. I just needed to own it. His name was Professor Aaron Mirek. And he didn't help me. He armed me. I was 19 the first time I stepped into his class. Communication and Modern Influence. It was called. Ironically, I signed up to avoid public speaking. I thought it would be essays and analysis. It wasn't. First day, Professor Mirek walked in carrying a briefcase covered in stickers. He was tall, bearded, bald, wore black button-downs and boots like he was in a band, not a faculty meeting. He dropped the case on the desk and said, "This course will change how you use your voice, whether you're a CEO or a kid who thinks he doesn't deserve to speak." He didn't look at anyone in particular, but I felt the words crawl into my chest like they were meant for me. I was terrified. 3 weeks in, we had our first class presentation. Everyone had to pitch a 3-minute speech on anything that mattered to them. My turn came. I stood up, holding my index cards like armor. The stutter came on the second word. Froze. My brain raced. My throat locked. Someone in the back coughed. I saw the professor watching me. Calm, unreadable. I mumbled, sorry, and started to sit back down. But he raised his hand. Don't. Everyone looked up. He walked over, handed me a small clicker. Then he said loud and clear, "Click once for every word you're about to say." Confused, I clicked once. Again. Clicked again. Again. Clicked 3 more times. Then he said, "That's what the rest of the world gets when they speak, rhythm. Permission. Momentum. You just needed a beat." He nodded. "Now go again." Gave my speech. 1 click at a time. It wasn't perfect, but I finished. When I did, the class clapped. Not out of pity, but because I had made it through. Professor Mirek just nodded. "You didn't stutter less," he said. "You just stuttered without shame." After that day, he became my anchor. He taught me voice pacing software. Gave me exercises to slow my breathing. Taught me about paralinguistics, cadence, and auditory training tools. But more importantly, he taught me that fluency isn't the goal. Confidence is. Years passed. I graduated, got my job at Harrington and Blake, and I lost touch with him. Until a week after that HR meeting, when I found myself staring at my laptop, drowning in strategy documents, and I realized I needed him again, not just as a memory, but as a compass. Emailed him. Subject line: "You once helped me speak. Can I ask again?" He replied in 10 minutes. "Coffee. Tomorrow. My treat. Bring your fire." We met at a small cafe on Ash Street. He looked exactly the same, minus a few more gray hairs. When I walked in, he stood and hugged me. "You've grown into your voice," he said immediately. I almost laughed. "Not really," I said. "I still say." He cut me off gently. "You stutter. So what? That's not your voice. Your voice is what you choose to say anyway." I laid it all out. The recordings, the humiliation, the betrayal, plan. He listened, never interrupted. When I finished, he leaned back and said, "You don't want revenge. You want recognition. But here's the secret. Those things often arrive together." He tapped the table. "The difference between victims and warriors isn't pain. It's preparation." Then he slid a small device across the table. "Speech controller. Advanced. Try this in your next presentation. Build your rhythm. Set your tone. Let them feel every word." I picked it up like it was Excalibur. Like, was sharp. Then he leaned in and asked, "What's your plan now?" Told him. Every step. Every folder. Every risk. He nodded slowly. "You've done your homework. But remember, you don't win by shouting louder. You win by becoming undeniable." He nodded. And for the first time since this war began, felt ready. We stood to leave. He clapped a hand on my shoulder and said, "Go burn the world down, Eli. But do it with grace." That night I went home and opened my files. Moved everything from evidence into a new folder. Strike phase. Activation assets. Then I practiced my delivery. With the speech controller. With the pacing software. With the professor's voice echoing in my mind. You don't stutter less. You stutter without shame. It wasn't about hiding it anymore. It was about owning it. And making them hear me anyway. Because the next time I stood in front of people, it wasn't going to be with my head down. It wasn't going to be in fear. It was going to be the moment everything changed. And Dean, he was going to be in that room. Smiling. Confident. Completely unprepared for what was coming. Predators rarely see the trap. Because they're too busy looking at the prey. Dean thought he'd won. Thought the HR meeting had fizzled. Thought I'd gone back to my silent routine. He had no idea I had spent the last 3 weeks building a perfect stage. And he was going to be the star. Started with an email. Subject: Support needed, VIP pitch opportunity. To Dean Harrington from Eli Park. Dean, we've been shortlisted for the Skelton Retail Systems contract. I've been asked to lead the proposal, but I'd like you to present with me during the final round. You're still our best closer. I want this to be a win for both of us. Can we meet Friday to align? It was bait, polite, strategic, go-stroking even. He replied within 5 minutes. Love it. Let's crush this thing. Lane. Sinker. Skelton was a huge deal. Multi-million-dollar contract. Game changer. Dean didn't realize that I had already spoken to the Skelton team behind the scenes. I'd made sure the pitch would be evaluated not just on strategy, but ethics, team dynamics, integrity. I made sure they were watching and listening. Prep 2 decks, one for Dean, one for the pitch. Dean's version had the surface gloss, buzzwords, high-level nonsense. But the real presentation, that was mine. Hard numbers, pain points, solutions, and one little surprise. Our prep meeting was quick. I let Dean talk over me. Let him improve my slides. Let him believe I was still nervous, still stuck in his orbit. He even said, "Don't worry, I'll cover the speaking parts. You just smile and click. Smile and click. Perfect." I walked out of that meeting and messaged Jessica. It's set. Get the camera angle. Friday, 10 a.m. She replied with a single word. Locked. You see, I wasn't just going to win the pitch. I was going to record the presentation. Legally. Visibly. Because Skelton had requested transparency documentation, a fancy term for video records during the finalist pitches. And Dean had agreed to it in writing. He didn't read the fine print. He never did. Friday came. The boardroom was pristine. Polished wood. Executive chairs. 2 large monitors. One showed our presentation. The other showed a live feed, a recording per Skelton's request. Dean walked in laughing. Slapped my back. You ready to ride my coattails to greatness? He smirked. He nodded, tapped the speech controller in my pocket, and whispered, Absolutely. The Skelton team filed in. 3 executives, 1 legal rep, 1 silent observer, the kind you don't notice unless you know what to look for. I did. He was compliance. Watching everything. Dean started. Charm on full blast. Thanks for the opportunity, he said. We're excited to show you what Harrington and Blake can do. My guy Eli here put together something amazing. I'll walk you through it. Slide 1. Fluff. Slide 2. More buzzwords. I let him run for 6 minutes. Then I interrupted. I'd like to walk through the cost-saving model if I may. Dean looked at me, surprised. You sure? He asked. Don't want to trip on the math? Smiled. I've got it. And click. Slide changed. Dean froze. It wasn't his slide. It was mine. A real-time breakdown. Year-over-year savings. Inventory optimization. And at the bottom of the screen, a live quote from Skelton's own CEO, pulled from an interview I'd read. Value isn't just what you build. It's how you treat people while building it. I spoke clearly. With rhythm. With authority. My stutter didn't vanish, but it belonged. Each pause felt like punctuation. Each word chosen, not forced. The room was still. I heard pens stop scribbling. Dean tried to interject once. Right, but let's also. I raised a hand. Respectfully, I'll finish this section first. The Skelton exec nodded at me. Not Dean. Me. 15 minutes later I concluded. We don't just offer systems. We offer culture. A team that values precision, integrity, and partnership. Then I clicked the final slide. Said nothing. Just a black screen. And an audio waveform. Dean frowned. What's this? Then the audio played. His voice. From the Windfall Lounge. He's useful. Quiet guys don't ask for promotions. All bark, no bite. Scratch that, no bark at all. Skelton's legal rep sat up straight. Dean turned to me, pale. What the hell is this? I looked at the compliance officer. This recording was provided anonymously by a concerned client. I chose to include it as part of our team integrity profile. Silence. Skelton's lead executive turned to Dean. Is that your voice? Dean didn't answer. Understood. Confident. We're not just what we build. We're who we are when no one's watching. I thought you deserved to know who's been representing our firm. No one clapped. They didn't have to. The silence was louder. Dean looked like a man who just realized the wolves had teeth. The Skelton team thanked me. Shook my hand first. Not Dean's. As they left, the compliance officer lingered. That took guts, he whispered. He nodded. It took preparation. Dean was still standing there. Face red. Hands trembling. You set me up, he said. No, I replied. You did that. I just recorded it. He lunged forward. But the boardroom doors opened, and Marla from HR walked in. Dean, she said. You need to come with me. Now. I walked past him. Out of the boardroom. Down the hall. Into light. This wasn't the end. But it was the shift. The moment the predator realized the prey had grown claws, and teeth, and a plan. Because silence is not weakness. It's the sound before the storm. And I had just started speaking. There's a certain stillness after an explosion. Not the kind with fire and rubble, but the kind where truth hits like a hammer, and no one can pretend they didn't hear it. Monday, 9 a.m. Executive Boardroom. Floor. An emergency meeting had been called. Subject: urgent review, Skelton presentation debrief. Everyone knew the real reason. Dean was about to be confronted, and I was the one who lit the fuse. The room smelled like fear. Not mine. Char was already seated. Legal was present. CFO, 2 board members, and one unfamiliar face, a representative from the Skelton Group. Dean walked in last, smiling, still pretending. He nodded at people like he had a clue what was coming. He didn't. The CEO, Mr. Aldridge, stood. Silver hair, power tie, calm fury in his eyes. Let's get started. He gestured to Marla, head of HR. She stood, cleared her throat. Before we discuss next steps, we need to acknowledge a formal complaint filed by Mr. Eli Park regarding workplace misconduct, public defamation, and violation of company values. Dean snorted. Actually snorted. Come on, this again. This is what we're doing. You're siding with a guy who can't say a full sentence without buffering. The Skelton rep stiffened. Everyone turned to him. Dean blinked. He didn't know who that man was. But I did. Dean, I said quietly. That's Mr. Jeremy Klein, Chief Operations Officer at Skelton. Dean's face turned to wax. Aldridge turned to me. Mr. Park, you may proceed. Understood. Steady. Clear. Speech controller in my hand. Every breath measured. Every syllable mine. I joined this company 4 years ago because it claimed to value people over profit. But during that time I was mocked for how I speak. Not once. Not twice. Consistently. Publicly. Click. I have recordings. Have video. I have client testimony. Dean laughed again, nervous now. This is ridiculous. This is what a vendetta. He's got a stutter and suddenly I'm Hitler. I turned to Marla. Nodded. She tapped her tablet. The boardroom screen lit up. Dean's voice loud and clear. He's useful. Quiet guys don't ask for promotions. All bark, no bite. Scratch that. No bark at all. Silence. Another click. A second audio file. He takes 5 minutes to say hello. Makes me want to jab a fork in my ear. Dean stood up. This is out of context. I turned to the Skelton rep. Mr. Klein, would you say this tone aligns with your company's code of ethics? Klein replied flatly. If this had happened at our company, the individual would already be dismissed. Dean sat down. His hands were shaking. Marla continued. This behavior wasn't isolated. We have documentation, witnesses, an HR complaint that was minimized. Mr. Aldridge turned to me. Why didn't you go public sooner? I looked at Dean, then at Marla, then back at Aldridge. Because I still believed the company could do the right thing. I don't anymore. But I wanted to give it one last chance. The boardroom fell quiet again. Then Aldridge turned to Dean. You've cost us a major contract. You've damaged our reputation. You've embarrassed us in front of a top client. And you've targeted one of our most effective team members. Dean opened his mouth. No sound came out. For once, he stuttered. And I didn't mock him. I just watched. Aldridge spoke again. Effective immediately. You are suspended pending a formal review. HR will coordinate your exit from company systems. If Mr. Park's documentation holds up, and I believe it does, you will be terminated for cause. Dean turned red. You can't do this. I built this company. I bring the money in. Aldridge replied. And now you're bringing lawsuits in. Dean stormed out, slamming the door so hard it echoed. No one moved. Then Aldridge looked at me. Mr. Park, do you want to pursue legal action? I shook my head. No. I just want the culture to change. He nodded. It already has. Later that day, Jessica found me by the elevators. She smiled. You spoke. He nodded. And they listened. The company posted an internal memo by 5 p.m. Effective immediately. Dean Harrington is no longer with Harrington and Blake. We are recommitting ourselves to a culture of respect and accountability. By 6 p.m. I received an email. From Skelton. Subject line, partnership potential, direct, they wanted to work with me. Not the company. Me. Dean underestimated me because of my voice. But the truth is, your voice isn't how you sound. It's how you show up. It's what you stand for. And once you learn to own it, no one can take it from you. He thought I was a quiet little analyst. But now, he was gone. And I was just getting started. Power doesn't disappear overnight. It leaks, drips away. One ally, one secret, one truth at a time. And Dean Harrington, he was leaking fast. The Monday after the boardroom meeting, no one sat in his corner office. The blinds were still drawn. The fake bamboo plant still sat by the window. But his desk, cleared. No goodbye. No last round of fake smiles. Just absence. Marla sent out the official line. Pending internal investigation, Dean Harrington is on administrative leave. But everyone knew. They'd seen the video, heard the recordings, watched the presentation collapse. It didn't matter how carefully HR worded it. The legend of Dean Harrington had cracked. And nothing was holding it together now. The whispers started first. From people who used to cling to him like perfume. He said something like that to me once. I always thought he crossed the line. I only stayed quiet because, well, he was Dean. No one was afraid to speak. And every new voice added weight to the collapse. 3 days later, the legal department circulated a memo. If you have experienced inappropriate or hostile interactions under Mr. Harrington's supervision, we encourage you to come forward. 6 people did. Then 12. Then 17. Turns out, I wasn't the only one recording. Aaron from finance had saved angry voicemails. Kelly had screenshots. Jessica. She had an entire Slack folder titled, Dean's Greatest Hits. The stories poured in. Racist jokes, sexist comments, intimidation. Dean hadn't just bullied me. He'd built his career on stepping on everyone. And now, one by one, those steps were breaking beneath him. I didn't say much during the aftermath. I watched, listened, documented. Because this wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about cleansing. About removing rot. And rot doesn't scream as it dies. Fades. The company offered me a promotion. Director of Systems Strategy. Better pay. Better office. Full autonomy. I declined. Not because I wasn't ready. But because I was done building empires for men who don't listen. Dean sent me a message a week after the fallout. Just a text. I messed up. I know that now. I want to talk. I need to explain. I stared at it for a long time. Then deleted it. No response. Because Dean wanted forgiveness. But he had never offered understanding. Some people think closure comes with a confrontation. Final scream. Slam door. But for me, came in silence. The kind that follows when you don't need to reply anymore. I heard he tried to pitch himself as a culture change consultant on LinkedIn. The post got 10 likes. 3 were bots. I saw him once, by accident, at a coffee shop downtown. He was alone. No suit. No watch. No crowd. Just a man staring into a black cup, like it might explain how he ended up here. He saw me. Stood halfway. His lips moved like he was about to say something. But I just nodded. And walked past him. Not out of hate. Out of peace. He never followed me. Never reached out again. Because Dean finally understood something. I hadn't destroyed him. He'd done that all on his own. All I did was stop protecting his silence. That's the thing about people like him. They think cruelty is strength. They think loudness is power. But real power, it's knowing when not to speak. When to let the truth play for itself. When to let silence be the final word. And in the end, Dean had nothing left to say. I used to believe my voice was broken. That it made people uncomfortable. That I was an inconvenience in rooms meant for fast talkers and sharp closers. That silence was the only safe place left. But that's not true. My voice isn't broken. Just needed space to be heard. It's been 8 months since Dean was removed. 6 since I left Harrington and Blake. Some thought I was crazy to walk away after everything I fought for. After I finally got recognized. But recognition wasn't the goal. Freedom was. And I didn't want to use my voice to defend broken systems anymore. I wanted to build something new. So I did. I started a company. Not a big one. Not yet. Just a small consultancy focused on ethical systems design, inclusive communication training, and leadership with integrity. We work with schools, nonprofits, and startups. We don't chase billion-dollar contracts. We chase impact. I called it pause. Because every voice deserves one. Pause to be heard. Pause to gather strength. A pause to remember that fluency isn't the goal. Understanding is. Speak now. Publicly. Workshops. Seminars. Even keynotes. Yes, I still stutter. And no, I don't apologize for it. Because when I speak, people listen. Not because I'm loud. But because I say things that matter. And I say them my way. I recently gave a TED-style talk. The room was full. Cameras, lights, hundreds of eyes staring. My palms were sweating. My throat dry. But I stepped up anyway. And I said, some people fear public speaking. I feared being heard. Because I believed my voice was a liability. What I've learned is that your voice isn't what leaves your mouth. It's what leaves an impact. And impact doesn't need to be smooth. It just needs to be true. The room went silent. Then someone stood. Then another. Then the whole room. Not because I was flawless. But because I was honest. And that's what people remember. Afterward, a young man came up to me. Maybe 19. His hands trembled when he introduced himself. He stuttered so badly, he couldn't say his own name. I smiled and said, take your time. He did. Eventually he said, you made me believe I can do more. I handed him my business card. Said, call me when you're ready. I'll be here. I walked away from that stage not as a victim, not as a survivor, but as someone who had finally arrived. Not in someone else's system, but in my own space. A space I created. A space I deserved. Dean once said I was all bark, no bite. Funny thing is, he never saw the teeth behind my silence. He never saw the strength behind my hesitation. He never realized that quiet doesn't mean powerless. And stuttering doesn't mean surrender. I don't need to record people anymore. I don't need evidence. 'Cause now, I am the evidence. That the underdog rises. That the mocked rebuild. That the ones they laughed at, laugh last. No, this isn't a revenge story anymore. This is a voice story. Worse, all of ours. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more courage. And sometimes, that courage sounds like a whisper. That never stops speaking.